Good afternoon. I'm Dick Hittner from Washington University and wish to welcome you to the first in this semester's FLAVA program workshops. Workshops, as you will be learning this afternoon and evening, are a direct part of the newly devised Virginia Foreign Language Professional Development Framework. We are placing special emphasis this term on what is known as teacher effectiveness for language learning, as I say, the TEL project. At the FLAVA conference in October and in the months thereafter, teachers across this first workshop this afternoon will be an overview of what TEL is and how it relates to our professional lives as language educators. Our workshop leader this afternoon is Dr. Lisa Harris, who is a specialist for foreign languages at the Virginia Department of Education. Dr. Harris, with the help of 5 others, led the creation of the Virginia Foreign Language Professional Development Framework, of which TEL has become a part, and as have these FLAVA workshops. I ask that you welcome Dr. Harris as she delivers to us this afternoon. Teacher effectiveness for language learning is more than just a concept. Dr. Harris, it's all yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Dick. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. I'm glad you all made it out, both on-site and in our remote locations. Thank you so much for joining us. I realize that you are here at the end of a very long day of teaching and learning that takes place in your classrooms every day, so I truly appreciate the effort you made to continue your professional growth by joining us here today. I am Lisa Harris from the Virginia Department of Education, and my goal for today is to provide an overview of the Teacher Effectiveness for Language Learning project and talk with you a little bit about how it relates to the Virginia standards for the professional practice of teachers. Teacher effectiveness has been on a lot of people's minds lately, and we do want to move beyond the realm of just talking about it into the practical applications and how we can move forward in our work while incorporating these new requirements that are being brought on board as part of the initiatives that are taking place at the federal, the state, and the local levels around teacher effectiveness. Today's workshop is going to have several items incorporated with it. The very first one that we're going to talk about are the Virginia standards. For those of you who are not familiar with them, there are some handouts that I sent to the host site coordinators, and if you don't have printouts of them, that's fine. But just know you don't need to take a lot of this stuff down in written form because it will be printed out for you, available either electronically if your host site coordinator chose to do that, or they might give it to you in a paper copy. If you have it, it'll look like this. It'll start with introductions with the information regarding the Virginia standards. Are you telling me to talk louder? Okay, I'll try to talk up so you can hear me a little more. If you need to ask questions or you need more input, go ahead and put it into the chat. We have Zach here, who is our technology genius, who's helping us to keep up to date or up to speed with all the technology. So as we get started, we are going to incorporate these professional standards for the professional practice of teachers. And we're going to start off with a question for you. And so here's your first question at your host site. We're going to take about 30 seconds. You're going to talk to each other. What are the qualities of a good teacher? Just very quick, 30 seconds. What comes to your mind? Go ahead and do that now.
Okay, what comes to your mind?
Knowledgeable, dynamic, and understanding of needs.
I think somebody that can motivate, recognize, assess quickly, and redirect.
Organized and dedicated.
Okay. Okay, we're going to bring you back in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and thank you so much for the brainstorming. Let's see what you came up with as the qualities of a good teacher. Let's see. Do any of these pictures generate any thoughts for you that recognize, that trigger something that you said?
Yes.
How about, which one?
The glasses.
Which one?
The
What's the
mean
name you think of?
The mean
That's
face with
one
the
who
glasses.
keeps those students in line.
Yes.
Okay, so a good teacher has to
Organized.
know about discipline. Okay. Any others?
I say the center one, motivating, listening, redirecting.
Excellent. Yeah. So one who engages the learners and keeps them motivated. Perfect.
The one with the ladder also has clear goals and a trajectory for his students.
Great. So the ladder, clear goals, a trajectory, one who really helps those students get up that ladder to success.
Cheerleader.
A cheerleader for your students. Exactly. Any last ones? Nobody mentioned one who knows the content
Content.
really well. Yes,
Oh,
knowing
I
the
don't like
content
that.
really well also. These are all absolutely important things for quality teachers to know. But the one thing we've sort of been missing as we went through all this is a written out sort of guidelines for how do we know that those things are taking place. And that's part of what this framework in the National TEL Project is hoping to achieve. So as many of you probably already know, the Virginia standards were revised last year, in 2011 actually, and they went into effect of July last year. And so there's been a lot of discussion at the school level as to how do we incorporate these revised standards into our evaluation systems. And one of the key questions that a lot of teachers have wanted to know is exactly how their performance is going to be documented. So let's take a quick look at a few things. One of the recommendations that came out of BDOE is that the divisions look for multiple data sources, that you do not rely on a single area, that you want to capture the full range of responsibilities for a teacher, and that you want to use these multiple sources to sort of be objective in how you go through the teacher evaluation process, and that your system incorporates them. None of these are new silver bullet type items that have come out. Many of you have been doing them all along in your division, and you're already collecting things that have to do with it. In each one, there are a few examples that was put out in the DOE guidance document, and here you can see a few of them. So for observations, there's a few bullets that are recommended, and this shows some of the other recommended data sources and some of the details pertaining to those sources. And there's a lot more of this in the DOE handbooks. If you're interested in this portion, you can find more on the websites there. That's not where we're really going to focus today, but I wanted you to have a quick look at it. And of course, school divisions can modify this. It's not something that's set in stone. This is guidance that was given. Yes?
Lisa, do we have a sample survey that we can use across the state?
We don't have a sample student survey. These guidelines are pretty newly developed. And so as we go through, a lot of this will be division level work. It's not one that's been given out
Okay.
across the board. However, we are a little bit ahead of some other content areas with our National TEL project.
Yes.
And so you'll see that we actually have some tools, not the teacher survey, but some other tools available to us that the other content areas don't yet have, and that I think we might be taking a lead on. You'll see as we go a little bit further along. Okay, so collecting all this data, of course, takes a lot of work, and you have to decide who's going to be responsible for it. Who is ultimately responsible for your evaluation? And the answer is, it's a shared responsibility. You should be involved in it. It's not just the administrator, nor is it just you. It is a shared responsibility. And so you'll notice that when you look and see who is responsible for these, you'll see check marks for the teacher and check marks for the evaluator. And sometimes the lines there blur, and you may have one who will perform it, but the other will evaluate it. So there's a shared responsibility that takes place here that you need to consider. And then finally, the last thing I want to show you from the DOE part is the recommended weighting. And this you're probably already familiar with, but you'll notice that 40% goes onto one standard. That's standard 7. That's the one that we've been having a lot of angst around. And it's also the one where you're going to have the most conversation generated at the division level. Now, whether it be good news or bad news, that's not where we're focusing today. Today, we're actually going to focus on the other 6 standards, because the other 6 standards are the ones that are directly correlated to the National TEL project, and that's where we're focusing. So I'm still hearing that, and I've got a pretty loud teacher voice here, so we might need to adjust the microphone volume up a little bit to go through. So we're going to work on that on this end. But based on the VSPPT, which is the Virginia Standards for the Professional Practice of Teachers, and the TEL project, brought those two together to come up with our Virginia framework. And the Virginia
Can you let go
framework...
of the mouse really quick?
Sorry?
Let go of your mouse. There we go.
Thank you. Sorry about that. The Virginia framework is going to focus on those first 6 standards, the 6 that make up 60%, thanks Nancy, make up 60% of the evaluation process. And so that's where we're going to look at today. Sorry, my mouse is off here now. The Virginia framework is in draft form right now. We've done a lot of work on it, but it's up on the web for all of you to review. The link to it is on the handouts that you were given. And if you've received a page that looks like this that says for more information, you'll see a link on there that goes to FLAVA-FLTWS, and that's where the professional development framework is posted at the moment. So when you get an opportunity, you should check that out and you'll get a lot more details there. We're going to reference a few points of it today. I don't think we're going to pull up any of the links just because of our connectivity with the PowerPoint, but you can always go back and see those for yourself. What you should know about this effort is that this is not a one-person thing. This is something that was developed by stakeholder groups, professional organizations, a lot of input from both teachers in the classroom, supervisors that are currently monitoring, evaluating, and participating in foreign language programs. And it's also based on the identified needs from surveys that were completed by professionals in the field. So it's not something that we just sat down and decided that we were going to put together. We got a lot of input. The standards and key elements of the Virginia part play a big role, as well as the TEL project as well. And then finally, there's a lot of research that went into it, including a study that was published in the Foreign Language Annals from the California Bay Area, where they came up with a model professional development plan that we can use to share around. And so those are the big elements. So now you've heard me mention a couple of times that TEL is a big part. And the TEL project is a big part. You may be wondering, what is TEL? So here's what I need to ask you. How many of you have ever heard of the TEL project before? And host site folks, if you'll just take a quick survey of hands and then type in the chat, most have heard, none have heard, everybody has heard. How many of you have heard of the TEL project or know anything about it? Okay, I've got 3 out of, okay, so I've got 60%. 60% in our host site. I've got some nones showing up. No one. 1 or 2. Okay. All right, so with the host sites reporting in, I'm looking at about a 20%, those of you who have heard of the TEL project, which is good, which means the word is starting to get out, but we want more of you to know about it. So the TEL project is something that was started in some pilot districts. It was piloted in Arlington, Texas, and a division in Kentucky, and a few others around. And they decided that we needed, in writing, this concept of what a model foreign language teacher would look like. And so they started brainstorming criteria for it. And they came up with domains, and they came up with criteria, and they came up with guiding principles to sort of pull this project together. And amazingly, a lot of what they did is very closely aligned to what we've done in Virginia with our standards for the professional practice of teacher. It's the standards and the key elements. So as we go through, you're going to see how very closely aligned they are. Some of the guiding principles that led the way through this TEL project that are very important to keep in mind is that, number one, the teacher is their own best motivator or coach, as opposed to, say, a principal or a department chair or some other outside person. The second guiding principle is that it's best to spend time looking for solutions rather than dwelling on all the problems that we face. Instead of focusing on the lack of motivation in our students, instead of focusing on needing more time to get everything done that we have to, instead we're going to spend what time we do have looking for the solutions. And then lastly, the third guiding principle is that setting personal goals for your own professional growth gets better results when you come up with them than yourself than if some outside person tells you what that goal is. So instead of letting your principal or your department chair or your division coordinator or some other outside entity tell you what to work towards, you do a self-evaluation and set your own goal as to what you're going to work for on your professional development. Does that ring a bell, Crossing? Okay. All right, so those are the 3 guiding principles, and those led to the 3 core beliefs of the TEL project. And TEL, did I tell you all? TEL stands for Teacher Effectiveness for Language Learning. Okay. Just in case I didn't, that's what the acronym stands for. You're going to hear me say TEL and that's where it comes from. First core belief, there are objective criteria of what a model foreign language or a world language teacher looks like. This is a good place to tell you that I use foreign language and world language interchangeably. The TEL project uses world language. In Virginia, we still use foreign language. We have the foreign language standards. It's the governor's foreign language academies. And our national organization is the American Council for the Teaching of Foreign Languages. So we use both, but you'll hear me slip back and forth with using both terms, and many divisions have changed over to world language. So either one, I'm talking about the same group. Regardless of whether you say foreign language or world language, the point is this is not a subjective process, is that it can be delineated objectively and research-based. The second core belief is that any world language teacher can become a model teacher if there are role models for them to emulate. The TEL project not only provides ample information to learn more about what can help a world language teacher to become more successful, but it also specifically delineates those criteria so that you can do a self-evaluation to help you get there. And then the third core belief, that the criteria in TEL may or may not be used in the evaluation process. It was not designed as an evaluative tool. It does, however, support the evaluation of foreign language or world language teachers should your division choose to use the products to help do that. What they can and they should do, however, is to help you guide your own professional growth. For example, should you be doing more of X, Y, or Z? Should you be doing less of something? Should you stop doing something? These are some guidelines that can help you determine whether or not you're being most effective in your practice. Okay. So, if an educator are true professionals, then like all other professionals, we've got to be open to new techniques, new tools, and new practices that research unveils. So here is what the research tells us. What teachers do affects learner achievement more than what teachers know. Here's where I have to throw in my caveat. Do not go back and tell your administrators that the Department of Education person said it doesn't matter how well you know the content. That is not what I'm saying. Yes, it is important to know your content. But what the research says is that it's more important what you do with that content knowledge than how well you actually have mastered the content itself. Think of it this way. Can every person who speaks English teach English? No. So every person who knows the content well in a foreign language cannot necessarily be effective in teaching that language. It's what you do with that knowledge that makes you so effective. What are the tools? And there's a lot of research to support this, including a recently published 5-year longitudinal study on the use of lingua folio and student goal setting and what you did with that content to help you get through there. Okay, so here's those Virginia standards one more time. We're going to start out taking a quick look at these 7 standards that comprise the teacher evaluation system, and we're going to look at how they line up with the TEL domains. In the TEL framework, you will see 7 different domains, and here they are. The little arrows in a regular PowerPoint would pop up, but you should be able to see them on here, and they are listed in the handouts, so you won't need to write down what they are. You'll have them in front of you. The TEL criteria are all organized under these 7 domains. The 7 domains are organized under 3 categories, and the 3 categories align with the national board standards. So if you look at the first category, preparing for student learning, you'll see that there are 2 TEL domains, the learning environment and planning. In the arrow, that tells you which of the Virginia standards it matches up to. Do you see any standards that are missing? Which ones?
One.
Number 1?
Yeah, number 1.
What else? And 7. So 1 and 7 are not missing. Now I told you from the very beginning that number 7 was not where we're going to focus today. That is what comes about as the result of getting these first 6 down pat. The other one that's missing is number 1. TEL does not have a direct correlation to professional knowledge, because that's incorporated throughout all of the other domains. Virginia has separated professional knowledge out as its separate standard. And so you won't see a direct one-on-one correlation. It's spread out throughout all of the other TEL domains. Otherwise, all of the Virginia standards have a direct matchup. Take a look at learning environment. Each one of these come with an essential question. And the essential question for learning environment is, how do I establish a safe and supportive learning environment? It's a pretty simple question, but how do you quantify that? What would you write down if you had to list the qualities of a model world language teacher in the area of learning environment to answer the question, how do I establish a safe and supportive learning environment? It's not quite as easy as we think at first. So part of what we do today is going to be to work through those criteria. TEL has already done that for us, so don't worry if you don't brainstorm them all. We're going to take a look at theirs, but we're going to see what we come up with also. In fact, TEL came up with 40 criteria in all, and that's a lot. You want to have to evaluate yourself on 40 different criteria? Well, maybe if you're a veteran person and some of them you're already pretty confident in, it wouldn't be so bad, but maybe if you're new or if you're not so confident, you don't want to do all 40, that's okay, because we've also narrowed them down to what we call the foundational criteria. So in each domain, there are 10 or 11 different criteria, but we've also identified 1 or 2 of the ones as the starting point if you don't want to work on all 40. Maybe the skills you want to focus on first, or the ones you want to make sure you have down pat before you look more in depth at the others. Okay, so here's your next question, and here's where you're going to get to work here for just a minute. What does a model world language teacher look like? And the host site coordinators, I want to ask you to have your team count off in 1 to 6. Just go around, and it's okay to have duplicates. Count 1 to 6 and then start over again at 1 until you've covered everybody you have. Okay, go ahead and do that now.
Caring for the students?
You'll be 1.
Okay, 1, 2, 3.
4.
5.
6.
How perfect is that? What number do you want? You get next week's. Okay? Would you just throw up a chat on there and tell me that you're done counting off, please? You're just counting off 1 to 6, and if you have 12 people, you'll start over again at 1 after you get to 6 the first time. All done? Good. Okay, if you are working in a small group, you have less than 6, just pick 1 and stop there. You don't have to worry about going on. If you're by yourself at a single site, you can just pick a random number from 1 to 6 and go through there. But here's what I want you to do. You're going to take a look back at those criteria. I'm going to put it up so you can see them. And you're going to brainstorm if there's more than one of you, or self-reflect if you're the only one with your number. What would a model foreign language teacher look like, demonstrate, exhibit, be able to discuss in that category? What would you say is a criteria of a model foreign language teacher in that category? So if you're number 1, what does professional knowledge look like in a model teacher? If you're number 2, what does instructional planning look like? You're going to take the next 2 minutes and either privately brainstorm or group pair share about what criteria you can come up with, and you're going to do that now. Take 2 minutes. How you doing? Are the juices flowing? Is the brain working?
I don't know, it's been a long day, as you know.
I'm telling you, it asks you to think after putting in 9 hours of this. All right, Dick, you want to bring it back up? You get more think time, because Zach stepped out. He's come back to unmute the microphone.
No.
This was interesting, 'cause I wasn't sure whether I should be talking here.
Yeah.
So if you see, oh, that was good.
I've never actually seen how this works.
It's the first time I've done it this way, so I'm not sure which direction I should have been talking.
Yeah, but I like that you can sort of see the chat thing so people can
Yeah.
can let you know kind of how it's going. And what is showing up there is what they're seeing, right? Is that the?
Yeah, they see this, and they see the video.
Do
They
they-
basically see this, what we
They
see.
see this screen,
Yeah,
okay.
What you're seeing is what the host sites are seeing. About ready to add your input, countdown starts soon. Okay, can you hear me back now? Somebody just type in can you hear the sound back on? Great, thanks. Okay, so you're not going to give immediate input yet. You're going to hang on to these because as we get to each of these standards, we're going to ask for you to go ahead and share what you came up with before we go over what the actual TEL project folks came up with in that area. So let's start taking a look at it. Remember these different areas that we had that you, yeah, I should have gone past this to you. Sorry about that. I unmuted it. Okay, standard one is the first one we're going to look at. According to the Virginia standards of professional practice for teachers, professional knowledge is related to how well teachers understand the subject content area, of course, but there's more than just that. It's also how best to teach the material, how the material connects to other areas, as well as being able to connect that to the needs of your student and their understanding. So, did anybody select number one? You have number one in your area? Okay, we're going to take a moment. You're going to share with your host site leader. Here you're going to share with me. And if you have one or two you want to type in, go ahead and type in what your folks came up with. What did you think of as a criteria for a model world language teacher in the area of professional knowledge?
I felt like they had to convey material accurately, like not only like how they teach it, but like knowing the subject and how they convey it, but also being creative and motivating the students, so possibly pulling from other like academic disciplines, films, and other things
Okay.
to kind of help and motivate them.
Good. Okay, excellent. So you've got several of the TEL criteria there. A couple, Zach, if you want to check, we've got some folks who said they've lost us. Okay, workshops to keep current, planning in advance. I'm hearing how in host sites. Anybody else on the host site? Being student-centered, good. Okay, we're going to take a quick look at what Virginia thinks is important in the area of professional knowledge. And they do this by delineating some key elements. And the key elements in Virginia start out with the very first one I think somebody mentioned, know your students, being student-centered. What else do you need to know? Well, number two boils down to, of course, knowing your content. Don't worry if you don't get all the pieces of this down. It is written down for you in those summaries. Okay? How about key element number three? Know the 4 skills of language teaching and learning. What are the 4 skills of language teaching and learning? Listening, reading, speaking and
writing.
writing, exactly. And how they're represented, of course, in the Virginia Standards of Learning. And then key element 4, know the curriculum, your division curriculum, the curriculum that's used at your particular work site. Okay? Key element 5, you need to know the culture. Yeah, not just the language content, but also the cultural connections. Okay. And number 6, this one I know you mentioned right here on site, know the relationships to other content. Okay. Key element 7, not just knowing the other content, but knowing how the other content supports your content. So it's not a one-way street, it goes both ways. You know theirs, then they should also know how it supports yours, and you should be able to incorporate it. And then number 8, you know the different resources and strategies to use to help get that language learning taking place. Okay. Last 2, number 9, you know how to move beyond the explanation and into the application. And then finally, you know your technology. Yeah, some of us had a little bit of trouble with that, so if I get going a little crazy here on the clicking, it's because number 10 is the one I've selected for my own area of professional growth as we move forward. Okay, so as I told you, there is no direct TEL correlation, so you're not going to see a TEL domain next. For all the others, we'll bring up the TEL criteria, but for this one, this is Virginia specific. And there are those 10 specific elements. So thank you very much, and thank you for all of you who contributed those parts. And we're going to move away from the professional knowledge into where the TEL starts, and that is Standard 2, Instructional Planning. And that also has a Virginia-specific statement. And according to Virginia, the instructional planning relates to whether teachers are using the prescribed curricula and the standards to teach and plan your lessons. Whether they're using data to inform the instruction, whether or not they are addressing strategies and resources to meet the needs of all different students, different kinds of learners. And it also means that the teacher should consider and plan for differentiating instruction whenever that's applicable. So, did anybody choose this standard at your host site? We're going to do the same thing. You're going to share with your host site, and host site coordinator, if you would go ahead and type into the chat whatever your folks came up with. And we're going to have here, who has number 2? What did you come up with as a criteria for a model teacher?
All right, I said keeping in mind the curriculum that your particular school is using, you need to work from the end of the year to the beginning of the year and break your plan down into objectives, goals, and outcomes on a daily, weekly, monthly, and the end of the year basis so that you're having a very panoramic view of what your entire year entails. And this might go along with professional knowledge, but I said you could collaborate with other classes in different subjects so that your lesson plans match up, so that learning that whatever you learn in social studies that day really has something to apply to what you're learning or a theme in your foreign language class, and then learning is like holistic and exciting for the student, and they can see connections.
Perfect, perfect. We had a lot of things shared at our host site. Let's see what you came up with at yours. I see brainstorming together, collaboratively planning, setting goals according to state and division curriculum, using activities that incorporate reading, writing, listening, and speaking, excellent. Using real-world experiences, student-centered, hands-on activities. Start planning at the end of the unit. Who said that? That came from...
I like that.
Using, exactly, Lily, yes. Using backwards design. We had a good explanation of that here, too, with what we were discussing. So backwards planning is very important. Excellent. Thank you very much for contributing. Let's take a look at what Virginia lists as the key elements and see how many you were able to identify. Okay, here are the first 2, and I'm not going to read these to you because I know that's not something that you need to have, but we're going to just click through the key elements so that you can see what Virginia has put out for them. And we're basically talking about enabling students to communicate, which is obviously the point of taking a language course. And then also following, somebody mentioned the division guidelines, the curriculum guidelines. Oh, I'm sorry. Those are the 2 that Virginia has identified. This also lines up directly with The TEL domain, call it planning. So standard 2 and TEL domain of planning are a direct correlation. The question that TEL poses to you is, how do I maximize student learning through my instructional planning? And some of the criteria they've identified, you've just named. Let's see how many you came up with. Here are the TEL criteria. How many did you get at your site? Just about all of them. You did a great job. Good job. Contextualize scenarios, making sure that you're giving students the opportunity to negotiate for meeting, that they have an opportunity to put things into real-world situations. If they're learning directions, that they have an opportunity to ask for and give directions and find out whether they just successfully arrive at the location they were trying to reach. The learner-centered activities, somebody mentioned on the chat, is a good job. The goal setting. But remember I told you that there's a lot of criteria if you took them all at once, and so we were going to narrow them down to some foundational criteria. In the yellow boxes, these are the 2 that were determined to be the starting point for this particular domain. So if you didn't want to work on all of planning, you just wanted to narrow it down to 1 or 2, these are the places to start and then move on. And so the 2 that the TEL project selected were standards and performance objectives. And of course, performance is the key of being able to move our students forward along the proficiency scale. Okay, I'm going to move right into standard 3, and I'm watching my time. I'm trying to be cognizant because I know we need to get you guys out of here at a really a decent time coming through, because I'm already asking you to think way beyond your work time already. So let's look at standard 3, and we're going to do the same thing. Virginia identifies standard 3 as what types of instructional strategies teachers use. Do we use the same strategy for all students every day? Do we modify these strategies to engage the students that we have, to get them involved in active learning? Do we take into account individual learning differences? What all do we consider? So, who had number 3? Same thing at the host sites. Go ahead and have your group or your individual responsible for standard 3 give you their results and type them into chat. We'll see what you came up with. Let's see what we got here at our site.
Yeah, I have a lot of things. Well, I said that the person has to be able to use a variety of strategies to effectively engage all students, and that their how you teach has to be very well organized. You have to make the goals clear to students. You have to arrange your instruction so the students have time to practice in different ways, so they have repetition of the language, teaching the actual language. That also you have to have authentic activities or real life sort of situations, and you have to teach in ways that are both verbal and visual and hands-on and active, so that you have different ways that students are learning the language. And I also thought it's really important, but this may be getting into assessment, but that it's important for students to have activities that allow them to self-correct and also to keep track of their own learning, so that it isn't just, teacher directed that way, but it's students directed and student-centered in that sense, so they learn how to manage their own learning. And I think that's all I have.
That's excellent. I'm seeing some things come up on the chat that sound a lot like what you just shared here. The multiple intelligences, which you addressed, the different learning styles coming in. Betty Rose, getting students up out of their seats, so important. Getting them speaking, getting them to actually use the language that they have come to learn. How important is that? The modalities is very important. Getting them writing, getting them communicating, building all the different proficiencies. And I love what we said here at this site. I don't know if you could hear it while you were talking, but we addressed the fact that some of this blurs over into assessment and into the others. You're going to notice that across the board. You're absolutely right. None of this is cut and dried. What you do here is going to affect what you do in assessment, because assessment can be a strategy. You are absolutely right, and I'm so glad that came out. The differentiation is an important part. You see that came up, so it looks like we've got most of our responses in. So you've done a great job. Let's see how many you were able to get that we actually have listed in the Virginia standards and in the TEL domain. So for this one, Virginia actually has 6 key elements that they've identified. And here they go. You're starting out with You got that one right off the bat, using a variety and incorporating all the student learning styles and abilities. So we got that in both the remote sites and here on site.
I think that culture, I forgot to mention it.
Ah,
Right there, right
the
there.
second one, yeah, that appreciation of cultures, and we did have that on our site, using those task-based activities I see just came up there on the, sorry, my technology here, trying to find the right place for the mouse. How about the third key element for Virginia? Using that target language as the primary language of instruction. This is one where we struggle quite a lot, and one where I think there's a lot of power in being able to finally master. And in number 4, that rich and stimulating environment, the key in there, that authentic resources, including interactions. This is so much easier now than when many of us were learning and starting out. Technology facilitated communication has really made this a reality in today's world, to be able to bring that more and more in. And then numbers 5 and 6, being able to use multiple methods and strategies to engage the students actively. Somebody mentioned that getting them up out of their seat, getting them moving, that actively engaged is very important. And then finally, that developing of critical thinking. Did we bring up the critical thinking one? I thought I saw it somewhere, or did I hear that with yours? Getting them thinking about your learning, using those metacognitive skills and getting really involved in developing
What I
that.
see sort of self-assessment. is-
Self-assessment, there we go, bringing right into that part, getting them thinking on their own. Okay. And of course, you know that this has a direct correlation to the TEL domain, because I told you there was an alignment with all of them except number 1. So here's our direct alignment. In Virginia, we had the instructional delivery, and TEL calls it teaching the lesson, but it's a direct correlation between the two. And the question that TEL wants you to ask yourself is, which high-yield strategies help my students achieve the daily performance objectives? There are a lot of high-powered words in that one little question. How do you decide on clear, specific performance tasks and objectives? And then how do you plan to make learners successful in achieving those tasks? There's a lot of power in that question. And of course, as you know from experience, some strategies are more successful than others. And so really one of the big things in this collaborative process, I think, is to help identify those and be able to talk about what is successful, where do we need to shed light, and which ones give us more bang for the buck, and the really hard one, which ones that we hold dear do we just need to let go of because they're not working. So let's see what TEL identified as those and see how many you got off the TEL list. Okay. I think we hit a good many of them, don't you? I think maybe the one we didn't talk about so much were the student behavior piece, the student responsibility, making sure that there's a respect for not only the rules and the routines, but for the culture, for the procedures that take place. And it's the student's responsibility to be able to maintain adherence to the classroom conduct, as well as to be faithful to the cultural norms that are set for that particular classroom. It talks about performance objectives on there, we mentioned that. Sequence, what do we mean by sequence?
I think about it, my guys sort of use the word organization, but there's certain things should come first and second and third, they need to follow in some ways. too, I
And
think.
not only the order they're in, but the fact that each one should be linked back to what your objective is. The reason that I'm doing it should be clearly connected to what my ultimate goal is for that day. That comprehensible input one is one that might have taken a few of you by surprise. That 90% of the time, this is actually one of those 2 foundational criteria. Was anybody surprised at the 2 that are selected by the foundational criteria for the TEL project? Yeah. They're all important, obviously, but that using the target language just can't be replaced. If you're not familiar with the term comprehensible input, it's one that all of us should become more acquainted with. Using the target language does not mean standing up in front of the classroom, talking away blithely in the language, regardless of whether or not there's any comprehension going on or any communication actively taking place between you and your students. What it does mean is consciously, actively using your language to teach the language. And it takes a lot of planning. And this is why every native speaker can't teach the language. Just like every English teacher can't speak English, every Spanish teacher can't teach Spanish. It's that thought process of actively selecting your language level, vocabulary, syntax, and what can be used to help teach the language by using the language. A very active process, which we're hoping to get a lot of training around in upcoming workshops if there's an interest level coming out. Okay, so teaching the lesson going by. Time to take us up to one of the big ones. They're all big ones, but this is one that everybody's talking about. Standard 4, assessment of and for student learning. So this one not only looks at the type of assessment strategies that teachers use to give grades, to give the evaluation, but also its instructional uses. Are the assessment types that you are selecting appropriate for the content? Are they appropriate for the students that you have in that class? Is the teacher gathering, analyzing, and using that data, or is it just something that is done because you have to do it? Does the teacher use data to measure student progress and to give feedback to the students? Okay, here we go again. It's your turn. Who has standard 4?
I do.
All right, so you're going to share at your host sites. We're going to share here, and we're going to see how many you came up with for the criteria. What would a model language teacher do in the area of assessment of and for student learning?
Well, all I have is test all facets of learning: reading, speaking, listening, writing, and culture. That's all I put.
So you put a lot into that one test.
Yeah,
test all
right.
your facets
We
to
should
come
get
through.
over for the state to define their.
Some of the things that you mentioned earlier tie right back into that, and one that you mentioned goes right in there, the self-assessment.
Yeah.
To come out, so it's not just what the teachers do. Let's see if we've got any coming up out from the remote sites. What do you have coming in? Was this one harder?
Well, it's harder.
Well, one of the things you left off is something that I know you do a lot, is you do a lot of project or like performance-based assessments
Yes,
too
that
of
is true.
students. I mean, I
But
know,
still, that would
based.
be listed
I know, but-
writing and culture and things, right?
yeah, but I just wanted to point that out.
Yes.
Because
You
you really
gave
do
a
that.
big, all-encompassing there, and you're breaking it down into some more.
Yeah, you have the 3 big categories, and I broke it down into like the smaller 6, 7 categories that we're talking about.
Well, it's
She's a department head, so I have to
She has
kind
to
of
very-
know.
30,000-foot view, 3,000-foot view. What else do we have? We have interactive tasks that make the test more meaningful to teenagers. That's a great one. I like that somebody put in here both formal and informal assessment.
Always.
That it's an ongoing process. That's an important point. And I like that somebody else mentioned time, the quick feedback, the timeliness of it, very important. Class practice, different kinds of projects. There's one that you just started to bring up here on our end also. Okay. Don't overuse any one type. What a neat point.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, we get bored with the same thing over and over if we're only going to use that particular type of assessment. That's an excellent point coming up. Let's see what Virginia has to say about it. See how many of these you hit. Virginia actually had just one key element. They decided to go the way you did. One big overarching key. Consistently monitor and assess. So it's an
So
ongoing
vague,
process,
though.
a timely process.
Yeah.
But you know, TEL did a little bit beyond there. They did not just use one criteria. There were a few more. Let's see what they got. So under how do I, my students and I, use assessment to show what they can do with what they know. What a powerful question once again. Is there any particular phrase within that question that really jumps out at you?
To show.
Well, and also
to show,
to do with what they actually know.
to
That's
do with what they know,
They're gonna demonstrate, I guess.
They've got to demonstrate what they
demonstrate. How about at the other sites? Is there any part of this question that jumps out at you? If you were going to underline something, why the I? What can they do? Have a choice of product. I see coming in for the other types of
can do.
assessment. Can do.
That's performance.
Such powerful words in this one little question. The one that jumped out at me, and everything that you committed is absolutely right on target, and the one that I really picked right up on was my students and I. That it's not just a teacher-based process, that it's something that you mentioned, again, tying back to the earlier one, students can self-assess. Students can self-goal set. Students can peer assess, that it's not simply a teacher-based process. So just as you, by coming here and participating in this as a professional, are taking control of your own professional growth, learners can have that same opportunity of taking control of their own learning process. And we have a lot of tools to help do that, especially ones like Linguafolio, where you set up the student portfolio system where they check off the tasks that they're able to accomplish and at what proficiency level. It's a great tool for helping to do that. Most of the good assessments in foreign language or world language are based on proficiency targets. Instead of just memorizing vocabulary, grammar points, they really take away the discrete and focus more on those three big interpersonal skills, or those three big communication skills, the interpersonal, the presentational, and the interpretive forms of communication.
Lisa, would you mind asking if anybody has used Linguafolio? Because I really want to start using that.
Absolutely. We've got a question we want to put out to everybody. We want to know how many of you have used Linguafolio in your work. We can take a quick poll with the host sites. How many people have used Linguafolio? Do we have any out there? How about here? Have any of you used
Does anybody
Linguafolio?
use that? But
That's our goal.
that's our goal.
Okay,
That's one of our
great. Well,
goals.
I have.
What do you think? Do you love it?
I loved it. I
Okay.
loved it. And I particularly loved the North Carolina version of Linguafolio Junior,
Okay.
which I used at the middle school level.
Oh, okay.
Electronic student portfolios, we have one. Nancy uses the can-do statements. We have one person there, another one using the electronic. Okay, so we've
Okay.
got some out there who are
Okay, we're
using
on
it.
the right track.
Okay, good.
If you're interested in Linguafolio, North Carolina has a full training online modules that you
I
can
saw
go
this
through
back
and
here.
check.
I
And
was
it's
so
on
excited about that.
your link list, because it's a really powerful tool, and there's a lot of research coming out now to support its use.
Well, we just got a big grant, and we got a 25 mini laptops, wireless card, and
Excellent.
a 7,000 grant that provided us with noise canceling headphones and microphones for them to be able to produce more of the language. We feel like
So,
everything else we're great on, but the production end
mhm,
is really difficult when you have 100 students a day.
absolutely.
And trying to get with each student is very difficult until we get to the upper levels.
You'll have to do a FLAVA workshop after you get that up and running.
Yeah.
Let us know how it works.
Lynn.
No, seriously. you
I'm
want
putting
to-
her in, I'm delegating.
Yeah, there you go.
See,
I think it should be a
Hack
joint
night.
presentation.
Yes.
The other part to not forget about this is don't forget how you're going to keep track of it all. And one of the ways that we can do that is by using really good quality rubrics, which allow us not only to give feedback, but also to assign points if we need to give a grade if it's part of a formal assessment and not just a formative assessment. And also it helps give students control of their learning by seeing where they can progress, where they need to get better, especially if you give them the rubric before the project. They know exactly what they have to hit, or you expect them to hit it. Okay, let's see how we did. Let's see if we hit all the points. So the criteria from TEL, what do you see? What constitutes quality assessments? Well, you see this collection of evidence. You know, we noticed that the multiple strategies to collect evidence over time, somebody mentioned, evidence is connected to the performance standards and to the proficiency level. Opportunities to figure out for themselves how they're doing, and it's not always being teacher dependent. The internal-external part is listed as one of the foundational criteria. This is really important because one of the places we take a hit is they say, well, if the teacher made the test, they're going to gear it towards what they know they can do well on. And that's why it's important to look at something that was developed externally in addition to what you developed internally. Again, the lingual folio, research-based, already set for you, the objective criteria, it's already done for you, and it's free. Are there other assessments? Absolutely. There are paid ones you can go out and pull in. There's the stamp test
It's free.
that you can pull in. There's no, stamp is not free. Lingual folio is free. Yeah.
What's the stamp test?
Stamp test is a computer-generated proficiency test done through Avant Assessment. If you just Google stamp, S-T-A-M-P,
Okay.
you can see, but it's a fee-based test
Okay.
that students take. There's also online versions of lingual folio. There's a pilot project being done right now through Castles that you can sign up to participate in for free if they're still accepting sign-ups.
That's right here.
Is that, I think I did put
You
that
have the
link
link
on
on
there. Oh, well, I was good preparing for this, I'm getting those links out. So there's a lot of different ones that you can use. There's the ACTFL test that you can learn how to do. We did a training session for 50 teachers this past fall on giving the oral proficiency interview, which is an externally developed process that you can use in your classroom once you're trained.
So I
there's
had
a-
that training years and years ago when it first was developed.
Really?
Have things changed a lot?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
the process is the same.
When they first
But-
developed it, they made me
It's
go
like the
through
difference
it.
between
The
chalk and a
concept is the
whiteboard.
same, but it's been so much more refined and
Okay.
so much more delineated now, that the training was really, it's fantastic training. I think there's a few people that are online there. Nancy, I know, is one who participated in the Moby training, going through, that would, I'm sure, be willing to share some of what they learned while they were doing it. And also, I think Nancy did a write-up in the last FLAVA bulletin, or a couple FLAVA bulletins ago, that you can read about the Moby training that we took place October last year, whatever the FLAVA conference was. It was
Oh,
right
we-
before the FLAVA conference.
We wanted to go to that, but we had teacher work days.
Yeah, and you had to be nominated. We could only accept
Oh,
2
yeah.
per division at the
Oh,
most.
we
And then,
wanted to go to just the FLAVA conference in general.
oh.
Yeah, and we had teacher
Well,
work days.
Mark it on there and don't let them put teacher work days
Yeah.
this year because it's a wonderful site.
Northeast.
Nancy says you can check out the FLAVA bulletin online at the website if you want to
Okay.
read about the training that took place there. So here's what you can see. Using that internal and external is part of the foundational, but also the collection of evidence, the multiple strategies, not the one size fits all, you fail this test, you failed for the year, is not the best type of assessment, but rather that overall progression is where you get the best bang for your buck. And then one that's listed on there, that performance-based grading, I realize that many of you have no say over what your categories are. But what you do have control over is the type of assessments that you put into those categories. And wherever possible, using, who mentioned it, the performance-based assessments will really help give you the best bang for your buck there. Giving it a way to be a reflection of their growth and not just an end result that once you're there, there's nothing I can do about it, but an opportunity for learners to improve. Okay, well, I've been talking a lot, and we have a couple more to go. We are up to number 5. Number 5 is learning environment. You're going to see, if you looked at that TEL domain list, that TEL actually has a domain called learning environment, but they have another one that I put in here with it, and it's called resources. So when you're thinking about learning environment, I want you to think about not just what's already there, but what you can bring in the way of resources to help improve it. So Virginia has a statement in regarding to learning environment, and that's that the teachers use resources, routines, and procedures to provide a respectful, positive, safe, student-centered environment that's conducive to learning. Another one of those big picture statements that really has a lot of challenges in many of the separate words by itself. It's challenging us. Are there high expectations for all students? Are the students encouraged to take intellectual risks in your classroom? Is the environment as well as the content intellectually challenging? Is what you put up on your walls going to make your students think? as well as what words you put in it going to make them think? Are there rules and routines in place that respect not only your classroom environment, but the culture that you're trying to teach about? All things that we can think about in learning environment. So who had this one? All right. What would a model foreign language teacher do to make all of that happen and come to place? Back at your host sites, once again, you're going to share and go ahead and let us know what you came up with while we share here as well.
What I said, you basically just said. I said the environment should be fun, inviting, and welcoming, not sterile and harsh, organized, representational of the target language and cultures, modern with resources and references, technology readily available. You need to have good acoustics, display student achievement, post visual expectations and model those goals and expectations and revisit them and adjust them. Be aware of different learning styles and employ different room setups and strategies in the environment that will help bring about that, whether that be today you're doing think, pair, share, or small group, or what have you on that.
Excellent. I don't think I can think of anything that you didn't come up with. Did you guys come up with anything else? How about from the host sites? Did you come up with a good list for learning environment and resources, which Virginia puts into one, but Tell breaks into two? Okay, speaking of resources, somebody wants to know if this slideshow is going to be up on the FLAVA site. I'll talk with Dick and find out what he has planned for it. I know the handouts were sent electronically. If he does not have it, I can put it into some kind of an Adobe show or something that might be small enough to...
We'll put this up on our YouTube page as well with the PowerPoint, so everything that's being recorded now will be on YouTube.
Zach says it'll be up on the YouTube site. And I'll also see what I can do to make available if you want to be able to use it within your school sites for some training as well. Okay, let's see how many you hit. How many key elements does Virginia have? Okay, we got our first two coming up. In fact, the only two coming up for Virginia. Diverse cultural viewpoints. Pretty self-explanatory for a language classroom. And then the one I'm not sure we talked about quite as much. We did mention the risk-taking, the active engagement, the social interaction, but did we talk about relationships and creating a rapport as being part of that learning environment? Here's a question I want to throw out to all of you, not just the one who did 5. What does it mean to have an environment where it's okay to take risks? What does that mean, risk-taking?
Well, from the studies, we know that people that are risk takers are usually the ones that become more proficient in a foreign language because they don't have a fear of trying to do things. So they put themselves out there, they're willing to make mistakes, and if they're in a classroom environment where they're being belittled and humiliated, will lessen their chance of becoming proficient eventually, because they will be eventually no longer wanting to take those risks that they need to take in order to become more proficient.
Okay.
That's what I think.
You need to keep repeating that it's okay to make mistakes, and you need to recognize when you're making a mistake, point it out to them, or if you do some kind of gaffe in class, that it's okay, we're just going to move on. And that's why I said it needs to be a fun, welcoming environment where you're not taking things too, like you're taking the academics seriously, but I think the step to get to proficiency, if you make a mistake, it's not the end all be all. You're going to correct that and move on. And that's one of the things we do in my classroom all the time.
Excellent. Anyone else? Did we get anything up on the chat there? Implement some rules from the target culture. That's a good one. What else? Lots of scaffolding.
Absolutely.
Yes, lots of scaffolding. And that early success. I remember being at a workshop that was done by the ACTFL Teacher of the Year a few years ago. Not the most recent one, but a few years ago. Just a workshop on Christine Longfair, French teacher, did a workshop on teaching in the target language. And I remember specifically her talking about correction when you're teaching in the target language, and how you have that battle out to whether you allow the mistake to stand or whether you correct the mistake. And she talked about when a toddler or a baby is learning to speak. How do we correct if your baby wants his bottle and they say to you, Baba, Baba? Do you withhold the bottle until they can say bottle. Say no. You know what they meant because you are what we use in the field as a sympathetic listener. As the parent, the sympathetic listener, you know that Baba meant your child wanted the bottle. So you give them the bottle, but what do you do when you hand it to them?
You say it.
Bottle. Here's your bottle.
You model it.
So you model it back correctly, but you don't withhold the bottle. And I think that's what we're trying to get to with this idea of risk-taking. It's not that we want to let the mistakes stand, but we want them to know that mistakes are a part of the learning process. And that's where it differs from the baby to the teenager. The mom's got the response down. Here's your bottle. They get what they want. But how do we know what is the appropriate way to deal with a teenager who has just made a mistake in front of their peers, easily embarrassed, doesn't want to be shown up, but we still need to make sure they know the correct way to say it? That's that battle we have with ourselves. I'm not here to give you an answer. I'm here just to have us ask that question of ourselves and make sure it's something that we're thinking about as we go through that correction process and that use of the target language. Okay, so these are the two Virginia ones, the two biggies. And then we have the TEL question. TEL wants to know, how do I establish a safe and supportive learning environment with my students? And since this TEL instrument puts you know, you're the professional, firmly in control of your growth as a professional, these essential questions are one of the things you can do to help guide yourself as you grow in that. And when you pull out these key words, safe and supportive, I'm hoping those are the ones that will help you guide the process for yourself. If you selected this domain earlier, you know that the list that you generated probably was immediately full of a lot of things that come right off the top of your head, come through. But then you probably got to that point where, but there's really a lot more to this. So what is there's a lot more to this that TEL came up with? Beyond those obvious ones, do you see anything there that comes up that you did not think of when you got past that obvious one?
Collaboration and drafting rules.
Okay, yep, that's one. Yep. Collaboration. And TEL specifically has the drafting of rules, but collaborative environment is really important in a lot of aspects to involve students in the process. That does not mean ceding control. It just means involvement and bringing that collaborative environment out. You mentioned the organizational part earlier as being important. And the two top ones that TEL came up with, does it surprise you that relationships and routines come out on top?
Routines create safety. I mean, for students, if they know the routines, they can anticipate, and that makes many
Excellent
people
thought.
more comfortable, I think, because they know what to expect. And they know how to prepare. That's the other thing, because they know you're going to be doing it certain ways, so it gives them a clue how to perform and prepare to perform.
Absolutely.
And with relationships, if your students get along well with each other, they're not going to be afraid to speak in class and take those risks that they need to take in order to become proficient.
Great point coming up from the host sites also, knowing when those cultural differences are inappropriate. And yes, there are some things that are not appropriate to bring into the post-secondary or even the college level classrooms quite yet, depending on the age and maturity of your students and on the curriculum you're covering. There are some things. Oktoberfest, not the only one. I'm sure you can think of some movies. I'm sure you can think of some cultural events that might not be.
Mardi Gras.
We have that next week.
We're already prepared.
So you can teach
Modified
about Mardi Gras, but you
modified
might not
Mardi Gras.
necessarily
Right.
incorporate all of the
New
activities
The
that take
biggest
place
problem
in
is when they start
association with
asking,
Mardi Gras.
how did you get those beads?
Yeah.
Oh, in France, they
I
don't.
think we'll go ahead and move on to the next one.
We're inappropriate teachers.
Okay,
Yeah,
remember
we're
I
bad.
told you there was another part that TEL includes. They have the resources separately, and it wants to know how you capitalize on those resources. So let's see if you named any of these when you talked about them. Any of these stand out? I know somebody mentioned a couple of different ways, the culture-rich classroom. about the 3 Ps? Here's a test. What do they call this? A pop quiz. What do we mean by the 3 Ps of culture? Type them in there if somebody at your space has them. What do you got, guys? 3 Ps of culture. What are they?
I'm not foreign language teacher. I'm an imposter, so I don't know.
Uh-oh. I think we've stumped.
I don't know.
Is it a stump the
People.
field?
You stump
Personal-
teachers.
Performance.
I see 2. Oh, we got all 3. Lily, good
Practice.
job. Nancy got 2.
Practices.
Yeah. We're talking about the products, the practices, and the perspectives of the target culture. And that's important to use as your resources, that you don't want to use just
I knew that, but not
American-made
names.
items, but you want to look for the authentic products, and you also want to incorporate them in a way that's true to the way they would be incorporated in the target culture. Can generate some great conversations when you talk about even something that could be as mundane as products. You can talk about tires and talk about how are tires important in Virginia and how are they important in France. Well, you might automatically think of Michelin, and you can have a whole conversation going about the industry and the business practices that take place. Exactly. Explore how your students, how it's seen from outside the U.S. and not just how it's seen in the U.S. Really interesting to go to the target country-based news outlets and read the take on something that might be seen so very differently than what it was from a U.S.-based source. So very important. The other things up there are pretty much the ones that you thought of maybe right off the top. The learning aids, those are things like what you put up on your walls, your word walls, your language ladders, passwords that you might use to, before you can go to the restroom, you have to use this particular phrase, you know, puis-je aller aux toilettes, or whatever it might be in the language that you're trying to facilitate. But you might notice also that this only has one foundation or criteria. Using a variety of authentic resources. So I guess what they're trying to say is that there really is no substitute for authenticity when you're teaching about the culture, when you're trying to bring in the target language practices and the products and perspectives, that being authentic wherever possible. And once again, technology has really helped make this so much more available. It used to be you had to wait till you went on a trip to that country, and teachers would scour the transportation systems and the department stores and the restaurants, and they'd be bringing back menus and ticket stubs and bank paraphernalia. And now you can go online and print out so many of these things, just whatever happens to be the topic at hand. You can find online on somebody's French Facebook, they've posted their official marriage announcements. So you can have one right there that's not only authentic but current. And you don't have to wait to travel overseas to get them. So there's one place where technology has really helped us. Okay, last one we're going to go over today. Standard 6, who remembers what it is?
Professionals.
All right, good going. Could that be because you were assigned number 6?
Perhaps.
Perhaps. Come on. Okay, Standard 6 is indeed professionalism. Virginia has this as one standard, TEL has it as 2. Professionalism and collaboration is broken into 2 parts for TEL, but we've combined them into one in the Virginia standards. Note there's 3 areas covered here in the Virginia part. We've got the ethical behavior, the contributions to education, and the professional growth. So we've got Zach on this end who's going to share what he came up with. You at the host sites are going to share what you came up with. How does a model world language teacher demonstrate professionalism?
Okay. It's kind of only really thinking of the first one, professional ethics, when I was thinking about this, and it kind of ties in with Standard 5, creating a good learning environment, and how you should be a role model for your students, and how they envision their optimal teacher to be. So perhaps dressing properly in class, using the right tone of voice with them, not raising your voice, not yelling in class. Giving every student, regardless of their skill level, a chance to participate, an equal opportunity to participate so that they could all become proficient in language. I think all of those tie in with being a professional.
Okay. All right, so how about it? What do we get up there from the field? Host sites, do you have anything else to add on professionalism? Let's see, attend FLAVA.
Yeah.
You are absolutely right. We have a fantastic statewide conference that everybody should make every effort to go out and attend. Celebrated our 100th anniversary a couple years ago here. First state organization in the country to celebrate 100 years of being an organization
That's
for
great.
foreign languages. Received accolades and recognition from across the country for achieving that goal. And the neatest thing about that is it's your professional organization. And so it is as good as you and what you bring to it. So we hope to see so many more of you come and make that continued success. Get out there and travel also coming out. And I love what Lily put up there. One word.
Share.
Share. Oh, do you remember the days when as teachers we went into our classroom, closed the door, and did our own thing? Those days are gone. We don't do that anymore. At least I hope so. I hope they're gone, and I hope we don't do that any longer. Being able to share is probably, to me, one of the best, the very most exciting things about being in the foreign language field. I was also a part of many other content areas. I was the interim director for curriculum that covered the whole spectrum, math, science, social studies, and I've worked with school improvement and worked with schools across the spectrum. And I came running back to foreign language when I had a chance because there is no other group like this one. There is no other group that is so willing to share, to be collaborative, and to really work together to develop best practices. It happens more here. And maybe that's because we're used to being the only one that existed in our little locations, and so we had to reach out to others in order to learn. We weren't a group that could gather together in a teacher's lounge and talk about social studies together. There was maybe one French teacher, so we had to get with the other teachers. But for whatever reason, we are a collaborative group, and we have really become the epitome of, that's coming in right there on the chat, professional learning communities. I think we can set the standard for that. So all of you should really give yourselves a hand for it, not only for being here for this, but for being the professionals that you are in the sharing. Okay, so why do we do it? Why do we want to share? Why do we want to be in a professional learning community? Why do we want to grow professionally?
I personally want to be able to have my students produce. I want to have the best students out there. And I want to take from anybody else who can help me get there. I mean, and I want to be able to give back too. I don't just want to be a taker. I mean, we really collaborate in our high school and
Yeah.
at least the foreign language department. It's amazing.
And then we got so excited because we found Pinterest.
Oh,
And-
it's interesting.
And we realized with Pinterest, we have a French language, La Classe de Français.
So many teachers
and so
are on
now
Pinterest.
there's so many teachers, and
That
we're all
share.
sharing like video clips. So I'm teaching the imperfect subjunctive in Spanish, and so I found something about that on a video clip that another teacher had pinned on Pinterest. So
It's fun.
there's a lot of very
Please
collaborative.
repeat that louder.
Oh,
Please repeat that.
about French.
There's Pinterest. If you go on there, you would be shocked at how many teachers are on there and that are sharing globally. We at our school found that out just by happenstance, and we'll get on there any weekend and share with each other, and then find something that's going on in Ontario or the UK or in South America, and it's fun because you're seeing all these other people pinning and sharing. On Pinterest, you just type in what you need. For example, I have a song that I found from somebody else on the verb être. It's to a modern rap song that the students know. And I can't tell you how many people have repinned that. It's not mine, but it's just a fun way to introduce and to I guess, to when you're doing adjectives, just to bring it up again. And it's Pinterest. And you just type in what you're looking for. French, La Classe du Français, Espagnol, whatever you want. And you'll find it.
And then also they had the Coca-Cola commercial in Spanish that was on the Super Bowl about
Wow.
spreading goodwill, and so that was something that my Spanish students really loved, and I found that on Pinterest as well.
I've not personally used Edmodo. I have used Pinterest, some of the other social networking sites.
I never heard of it.
We also have, if you've not already joined, FLAVA has a Facebook page. So if you don't have a Facebook account, it's worth it to create one just to join the board for FLAVA. Because this is somewhere that you could post all of these things at without having to go write a full article. You could just put
Okay.
up there, check out this link, and you can link to that Pinterest site, and then everybody who goes on can see it. I don't know about Edmodo. Does anybody know about Edmodo they want to share?
It looks
with
like
them?
they use that in Roanoke.
Roanoke County uses Edmodo.
I'll look it up.
There's a world language group there.
They recommended
have
in
a
the
couple of
last
suggestions
actual
for you.
bulletin.
And I know that you're overworked, and I know that you hate having people ask you to do more things, but quarterly, and Nancy, type on there and correct me if I'm wrong, quarterly, FLAVA is publishing a bulletin with news and information for use by foreign language professionals. Would be a great place to write just a column or a small article. Foreign language teachers, check out Pinterest and how it can be used. A few bullets, doesn't have to be real
It's
involved.
fun.
Okay, Liz,
Send it in to
you write
Nancy
that.
Feigenbaum for posting in the FLAVA bulletin. All kinds of news. She'll
Look
take
at Nancy.
short or long. Send it in there. Same with Edmodo. Nancy, if you're using that, you might want to consider sending in a little blurb on how we use that. The more we can share, the more we are working towards this standard of professionalism. And remember, if you do that, when it comes time for your evaluation at the end of the year, when your evaluator wants to know how you've demonstrated that standard, you've submitted an article to the professional bulletin. That meets
Nancy,
your standard.
Nancy, can you post your email?
Nancy, can you post the email that you want people to send ideas
Articles?
or articles to for the bulletin?
I'll write it up.
I know if you go to the FLAVA website, there's a link that'll take you to that that you can click on. It'll be, FLAVA editor, I think, bulletin editor at flava.org. It'll take you on there. But there's Nancy's address also that you can use, as well as the FLAVA one up on the site. Okay? So,
I'll send it.
let's see.
Okay, good. Okay.
See what you came up with. That was a good discussion, and thank you so much for sharing those points. The FLAVA president, if you know her, Catherine Murphy-Judy, is very much into the social networking technology aided and facilitated sites, so she'll be very excited to know that you have more of these to share, especially if they make it to the bulletin or some of the others, or even possibly a FLAVA session on how to use it and what some of the results are. Remember, that's where those FLAVA workshops come from. They come from you.
Right.
So how to use Pinterest to communicate and share ideas, I think would be a perfect little
It's-
And I
FLAVA workshop.
never would have thought of it.
It's easier to talk to
your
students
idea.
than your peers, though,
But
honestly.
it's what we need. Remember, we just talked about this collaboration and this need to share
We can
those
do it, right?
ideas. Something that comes to you so easily and naturally is completely new to many of your colleagues who would sign up in a New York Minute to hear about how you're using the social networking sites like Pinterest, and have you go on and show some of those things to them that would really open up practice for them. So think about it. It's out there.
Could be that bulletin.
Okay, so you've touched on most of these. Take a look at what Virginia has to say in the key elements. We're talking about working collaboratively with the colleagues, absolutely collaboration. Okay, and the second one, we are talking about keeping up to date. Somebody mentioned that, I think, right off the bat, very first one, staying current in your language, in your culture, and also in the methodology of teaching second languages. Nobody mentioned this one, but I think this is pretty much a given, that you also have to be able to communicate in your language of instruction for your students as well as your target language. So your English skills have to be just as good as your target language skills. Or otherwise, and that's the three key elements that Virginia has. And then of course we have the tell question.
I have a question.
Yes.
I am not a foreign language teacher. I'm a teacher of teachers, and so I wanted to see about this. But, how do people keep up, with their language if they can't? Where does the money come from for them to go to courses or go to the language?
Out of your pocket.
It's a good question. Most teachers pay for their professional growth out of their own pockets.
Yeah. That's
A
something.
few divisions will do some tuition reimbursement for courses. Some divisions have consortiums where they will put together and do regional workshops that they don't charge for, the teachers can come to. But it really is up to the teachers and the groups to put it together. Linda Swabowski in Chesterfield did a regional effort on integrated performance assessment so that teachers could have an opportunity to learn about this as a new way of of putting assessment out. So it's really the teachers do it, and they do it together. They come to FLAVA and they share. And FLAVA is adding pre-conference workshops this year that will be done in the target language.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
So I think that's really a good way that teachers will be able to come in and get their own skills an opportunity to work on. Okay, let's take a look and see how Tel defined it and see how many we hit. There we go. Zach, you hit it. Number 1, right off the top. Your professional conduct is one of the foundational criteria. And then professional development, keeping up with, regardless of how you're going to pay for it, but being able to, whether it's through technology, whether it's through attending these workshops, which are provided at no charge to the teachers, or whether it's joining a chat group where you just work on developing your own language skills by talking to each other in the target language, either in person or in some technology facilitated mode like Skype.
And there's some scholarships for studying abroad with ACFL and AATSP and different organizations.
Absolutely.
You need more, I mean, that's an area that seems to me there could be some.
It really boils down to how to behave as a professional, and by your demeanor and your willingness to keep learning the craft of teaching, moving on. But remember, there's a second part. It's not just the professionalism, it's also foretell the collaboration. And so how does your collaboration support student learning? Let's see how many of these we did. I think we missed the one that's the foundational criteria. We talked about most of the other things: partnerships, connections, involvement of your stakeholders, getting your parents involved, getting your community involved, going out. If you have a French restaurant in your community, maybe involving them, not just by going on there as a field trip, but as a guest speaker to come in, or as a resource
as well.
to send it. Exactly. Your administration is so important to keep current on what you're doing. Sharing those positive messages with them, as well as just when something's going wrong. Keeping that communication really open to go both ways.
I would think even government officials, frankly, because unfortunately, when times get tough, sometimes things like art, music, foreign language are seen as frills, not as critical.
Absolutely.
So you really need to keep that up.
Absolutely.
So that the funders.
And the statement was to make sure we involve our legislature and our government organizations as well, because ultimately funding goes to the areas of perceived priority and need.
Yeah.
And so we need to make sure that they know what we're doing, and so that they know how important it is. We do have some good advocates. You know, we've got Senator or Congressman Holt from, I'm the least proficient person to talk about government, I think New Jersey or one of the other northeastern states, who is a big proponent of languages. And we've had heads of certain government organizations that were really proponents of getting language instruction improved. But then we have those who don't see it as a priority. So we need to advocate, and Thomas Sones is the FLAVA advocacy person who can let you know if you have questions about how we can advocate. That is very important.
Rush Holt.
Rush Holt, that's it. Thank you. That was stop doing. Oh.
Oh,
okay.
so many verb conjugations.
I got you. So many verb conjugations. All right, so question to ask yourself. I'm going to stop talking for a moment, and I'm going to have you start talking for each other for just a moment. And here's the questions to ask yourself. How do you know what you should stop doing, what you should start doing, what you should be doing more of, and what you should be doing less of? We just went through the whole range of the first 6 standards, and there's a lot of material there. How are you going to know which of those meet one of these questions? You're going to take about 30 seconds, you're going to do a pair share, you're going to talk to each other. How are you going to go about deciding for you and your professional growth what you should stop, start, do more, do less? Okay, about 30 seconds, talk.
What do you say? I think analyze student data.
What do you want to stop doing?
What do I want to stop doing? As a teacher, probably talking as much.
You think, okay,
Letting
that's a good
students talk
idea.
more. Yeah.
Stop, okay, and then start doing?
Well, letting them talk more.
Okay.
Well, how do we determine what we want to stop, start, do more of, and do less of?
Well, if we want them to produce more, then we should probably talk less about them talk more. Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, what do we want to do less of? Is that, that's the same thing, do more, do less?
I want to do less of formal, like giving
Formal
Grammar
grades
explanation.
that they're gonna,
Okay.
like, that are concrete. Like, I like to give them assessments where they can rework it, redo it, so that they don't think, oh, I got an F, I'm done, move on, or I got an A, I'm done, move on. I really don't like grades
I
that
think I want
much.
to do more community involvement. I would want to do more.
Okay, we're gonna come
Yeah,
back
people
in
don't know what we're
5,
doing, then.
Talking with the Hispanic
Four.
community here.
Yeah,
3,
Start doing more than
2,
technology.
1.
do more technology.
Okay, we are going to come back together. I heard a lot of great things on this end. I also saw going into the chat, and Zach, you may want to, they weren't going to be able to hear this, so maybe if you heard one or two key things, you can
Oh,
throw
that's
them
the
up on
same
the
thing that
chat for
Jenny
us.
said.
Okay.
Some of it was repeated on the chat coming up here. Betty Rose typed up classroom observations, and I'm assuming you're answering the question I asked of how do you know what you want to do these? And so that was your answer to how you would know which items you want to start was through those classroom observations. And then I saw the answer to some of the specific questions. I see what we should stop doing is so many verb conjugations. We should start focusing on communication. We should do more of the outreach into the community, and we should do some less multiple choice, less lecturing, do more student involvement and productions.
What would you say yours is like more ongoing assignments?
So these questions that we ask
I
ourselves,
don't
and are
remember
really,
what I said.
up to
I'm so
this point,
sorry.
has not been
Less
an
grades,
easy
more sense.
answer because we haven't had defined
Less formal
for
grades.
us
I
what
don't
this
want-
model
I don't want
world
to put it in.
language teacher would
Yeah,
do,
grades
so
don't.
that we know, we've pretty much just been winging it and deciding for ourselves, did it work, did it not work, well, I'll keep doing it, and maybe I'll keep doing it even if it didn't work, because I'm comfortable with it. And it worked for me, so it's what I knew. There's a better way, and TEL is going to help you get there. How are they going to help you get there?
I don't know, how,
How are they going to help you get there?
tell me.
The first way they're going to help they get there is they have developed a whole entire self-assessment inventory where you can assess your own practice and decide for yourself, rather than asking some external observer come in and tell you where you want to work and what you want to establish as your goals. Every one of those domains that we just reviewed and its list of associated criteria is broken down for you in the self-assessment inventory. This is a tool that you can use to help you answer those questions. This is the example that you see up on the screen in the learning environment domain. And you'll notice that we have yellow boxed up there at the top, that after you consider each statement carefully, these are the questions you want to ask yourself about it, and you want to mark off one of the first four. I don't do this, I do it sometimes, I do this most of the time, or I do this with confidence. After you've completed that domain's inventory, you should then decide which of those ones that you do not do with confidence that you want to establish as a goal to work on. And those are the ones you mark in the last column. This is a goal of mine. Keep that in mind for the moment, because I want to ask you to do something to help not only you, but the entire foreign language, world language community, if you choose to participate in. Okay? Notice how each of those criteria is labeled. See the LE1, LE2, LE3. The LE stands for learning environment, so you know which domain it's in, and then the criteria themselves are numbered. These are correlations. These are the numbers that we used in the Virginia framework. Whenever we put out a professional development, we've put these letters next to it. So if you have chosen to work on LE1 as a goal, you can go to the FLAVA conference bulletin and see which workshops have LE1 next to them. And you can locate workshops geared to your
cool.
specific professional development goal.
That's really good.
We've started doing that in FLAVA with this past conference, and it's going to work its way into many other organizations as well. So when you see something put out by the Virginia Department of Education Foreign Language Office in professional development, it will be associated with one of these criteria as well, or it'll say it's for the entire domain, regardless, so that you can match up the PD session to your goal areas and be very focused on what you choose to attend.
Will that be in other professional conferences like the Northeast Conference in Baltimore?
We're
Or
hoping that it'll move more and more to them. ACTFL is talking about using more TEL. the NECTFL Association, I think is. It really depends on their leadership and how long it takes them to move forward. But I think we are the first organization, don't hold me to it for sure, but I think we're the first organization, FLAVA, to fully incorporate it at our state level conference so that you can match them up to the national project for TEL.
Interesting.
So you've got your Virginia standard, your TEL standard, your PD session, your goals, all in a line. And there's some other tools that are going to help you implement as well. We're going to take another quick look at. Okay.
Is this available anywhere?
Yep, there's a copy of it in your handouts, and
Yes.
it's also available
Oh,
electronically for you to
lovely.
download. Okay. This page is one of the appendices from the Virginia framework. And what you can see, it's marked draft because we're not going to finalize it till we finish gathering all the input from the field, because we want you to know what you need. But this is a crosswalk between what we just talked about. So what you see up at the top, the National Board Competency Standard, the Virginia Foreign Language Teacher Standard, the TEL domain in a line, the key elements that Virginia has identified, and then the self-assessment characteristics that TEL project has identified. So you can see them all at a glance, how they relate to each other. You can use that in several different ways. I'm sorry, there's another slide on here that I didn't mention. This is also a list of observable behaviors. So if you're a teacher preparation person, you could go into the classroom. If you are looking to work on assessment of and for student learning, these are the list of things that you could look for to see how successful your teacher is being in that area. Which of these criteria have they already mastered that you would want to check off for them? Okay?
Hang on one second.
Yep. Oh, is that you doing
There
that?
you go.
You're messing me up. Thanks, Zach. No, you did a good job. So here's the activity coming in, and this is not one that we're going to go in depth to. If we were doing a full day workshop, I would have you sit down and actually go through and do this. But this is what I want you to do on your own. Okay? Take out the self-assessment inventory. Now, if you're at a site where you have it, you can look at it now. If not, you can go online and look at it electronic. It's under telproject.com. They're all posted. But if you take a look at the self-assessment inventory, it's these back pages. It looks like this. And find the one for assessment. And you'll see there's 5 criteria. Okay? We're just going to do a real quick right now. This is not what you would do on your own. On your own, you would read this in depth and you'd think about it and then you would mark it. But right now, just very quickly scan down and pick one to be a goal area. Okay? So just take about 1 minute. If you have it, paper version with you, that's fine. If not, I'm going to go ahead and click back on the screen and maybe you'll be able to see it up on there. Choose one of these as a goal area. Zach, I'm going to try to go backwards on this.
That's fine.
Can't see on that one. And you can't see all of it on that one. Okay, I don't know if you'll be able to read those or not. That's pretty small, but if you can, if not, hopefully you'll have the paper version.
You're right, that's a good one. Okay. I know how to focus on the negative, but time, I would love to have more time. Or I'd love to have less students in the same amount of time.
Okay, just for the sake of time, we're going to focus just on those top ones, not on the sub-bullets. But if you were doing this in depth, you would look not only at the main criteria, but the sub-bullets also. I'm going to ask you to hold up your finger here, and at the host side, if you would do this also, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, to indicate which criteria you chose as your goal area. So if you chose A1, you'll hold up 1 finger. If you chose A2, hold up 2 fingers, okay? Host sites, if you would take a survey, please, very quickly, and then I want you to tell me which one had the most votes at your site. 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, okay? So here at this site,
Oh, we're unanimous.
okay? Here at our site, we chose criteria 2. Okay? Hopefully you had a chance to do that real quickly, but here's the purpose, the reason I wanted you to do this. If you were a department chair, and this group that just took this survey were your teachers, or if you were a division level coordinator, and these were the teachers in your division, or if you were a teacher preparation person, and these were your students, and you were getting ready to deliver your next professional development session for that group, how do you know what to talk about at your next session? In my group, I'm going to focus on student self-assessment. How did I know that? Because my teachers have completed this and they've shared their goals with me, and I know that they've developed that as an area, or they've recognized that as their area of need. And so I'm going to respond to what they said by providing an assessment workshop that circles around back to student self-assessment, because they chose overwhelmingly criteria number 2 as their workshop. So at your end, some of you might want to focus on criteria number 4. So you might want to present a workshop on how to give effective feedback, because your team mostly selected 4, and you know that will be of interest to them. That's exactly what we did with the FLAVA workshop series. We had teachers participate in this self-evaluation and share their goals, and the remaining sessions were selected based on the responses that we received from teachers saying what their goal areas were. How powerful is that? What professional development you're getting is what you selected to have happen. What a great tool. So, I'm going to get back to where we were. Not to get overwhelmed, if you are the person in charge of professional development, whether it's your own, your teams, your schools, your divisions, you can decide how much or how little of this tool you want to use. So for example, your entire division is focusing on assessment like we just did. You can give just the assessment domain and not have the teachers complete the entire self-assessment survey, but just the assessment domain, and then you can select your topics only from assessment. Or you might say, I'm working only with my new teachers, so I'm only going to have them focus on the foundational criteria worksheet, and I'll select only from them. It's really up to you. If you have a lot of veteran teachers that are very comfortable, you might want them to take the entire self-assessment inventory and see what comes out from that. But it's really up to you to decide how much or how little that you want to use it. Okay, and try to roll these on down here. So once you've selected your goals, some ways that you can use it. Identify the related topics. How are you going to know what topics are related? Well, we've done that for you too. We have put it in the framework so that you can see if you selected goal area A4 and you think you're at the novice level, there are some topics associated with that. If you're at the intermediate level and you just want to step it up, there's some topics related to that. And if you are already at the advanced level, but you want to become a leader role in that, there's some topics in A4 for you. So we've delineated all of these. This is only going to get better based on your input, because the recommendations for topics and for future sessions are going to come from you. We've been using these in a lot of places. We've already mentioned many of them. The Washington Lee webinars that you're participating in now, the FLAVA conference, the regional PD sessions, and also what we're doing at the Virginia Department of Education. Okay. How is DOE getting this word out, and how are we incorporating it? First thing is a state survey. I know you can't see this link because the color is not showing up, but it's on your handout of related links. When you finish this workshop, I hope that each and every one of you will go and click on this survey and tell us what your goal areas are. Take the TEL self-assessment inventory, and all we're asking you to do is report your goals. Not which ones are doing well or not so well, but just what are your goals. And then future sessions will be selected from that information. We've already incorporated a MOPI, a Modified Oral Proficiency Institute, for developing oral proficiency. We hope to do more. We're going to have some videos archived, and we've started a new teacher bulletin board. If you've not yet checked out Teacher Direct, please do that. It's on the DOE website, And I was going to show it to you, but I can't click on my links for this. But you can go on the DOE website, click on Teacher Direct, go under the content-specific news and find foreign language. Click on foreign language, and you can see only the foreign language headlines. If you have a headline you think the rest of the state would be interested in, send it to me, and I will submit it. Our week is the 3rd week of the month, but we can put them up anytime if it's time sensitive. Yes?
Your Survey Monkey is not on the back. Where would we find it?
It must have fell off. I am so sorry. I will
It
send you the
just fell
survey link.
off.
It fell off. All by itself, the monkey jumped off the page. You know how when you're transferring pages from PDF to Word?
Well, I just wondered you,
It
if
fell
we
off.
didn't respond,
Thank
it
you.
wasn't because we didn't like it.
Thank you. I will post up the link to make sure everybody has it, and I'll ask Dick to post it with the information on the website also. Okay. Also going along with this Teacher Direct is a professional development calendar, which is searchable, and everything that I know about that is open beyond a specific division. I'm not putting up division-specific items, but if you have something in your area that's being offered to a region or that other teachers can attend and you tell me about it, I'll post it on the calendar so that anybody can go and search it. I've posted up the webinars from FLAVA. I've posted up anything that comes to me that's of a broader than just specific division interest. Again, if you know about one, please share it. And I'll have Dick send out the links in an email as well. Thank you. Okay, coming down to the end. Here's the question. How can you use this information at your level? It doesn't matter whether you are a student teacher, a teacher trainer, a department chair, a veteran language teacher. Everybody can find some use. What would it be at your level? And we're going to go once again to just about a 30-second. Talk to your neighbor and say, do you see any use for this information at your level? How could you use it? Go ahead. About 30 seconds.
Don't just stare at me. How can you use this? One of the things I see is it's overwhelming and inundating. What is the word I look for? But now we can pick out one specific strand and work on that. And then once we work on that, we should get on something else.
Yeah. The new teachers that we get in, should we make them take this?
It would be fun to give it to them as a resource, but I think it would be overwhelming. I think we need to pick the one, the domain,
Yeah.
and then as a group, maybe you, since your department head, say, I want to deal with this at our, we have our own little department meeting, so let's talk about this.
I think I want to give the new ones that come in the whole thing, so that they can.
We are going to come
they
back
can
in
take it
5.
seriously.
All right. Well, it is important that coming out of
Quatuor,
teacher education, they might know, but if they're
Tres,
not coming out of teacher education, they
Duo,
might not. So you're right.
Bonus, nihil.
Deviant.
Even in Latin, we can do whirlwind.
I don't know. I thought she was creating something.
Okay, so how can you use it? Did you get any good responses? Let's type in just 1 or 2 from the host site. See if you can think of 1 or 2 ways that you could use. And I see 1 or 2 coming up. How about on here? What'd you come up with?
Well, we have different, I train teachers, but I am not a formal teacher. But even so, sometimes when we're training teachers, I observe teachers just on general sort of pedagogy, and then someone else, observes them for their actual foreign language proficiency. And I think a lot of these are very similar to other standards like Charlotte Daniels. I mean, this gives you some things you want to look for,
Excellent. I don't know if you all could hear that or not, but it was a very good point that was made as from a teacher preparation point of view of how these standards not only relate to Virginia, but also to many other of the frameworks like Charlotte Danielson, which Virginia basically based theirs a lot of off of. At Marzano strategies, so many of the other things that are out there. It's true.
Well, and it helps you give student teachers or people who are novice teachers very concrete feedback. Because instead of saying, oh, you should maybe do this better, you can say, look, in this particular domain right here, it looks like I'm not seeing this. And what could we do to increase that?
Sort of similar to what I'm seeing one up on the chat site that used to clarify a lot of things, giving concrete examples,
Yes.
getting out some more information, a reminder of the goals. So that's some great uses we're seeing, and I hope that you'll be able to think about some ways to use the tools. And there are some other tools that TEL has out that can help you do this. This is great for what you just mentioned. coming through. So whether or not you choose to use the whole TEL thing, there are some resources that might help you. Up on the TEL website, these are some of the things you will find to help you implement whatever way you've decided to implement. There are not only the articles, the exemplars, and the correlations, but there's some correlations to that research that you just mentioned. If you look on there, you will see this item, which takes the TEL criteria and crosswalks it with the NCATE, with the National Board, with Charles Danielson, with the Marzano strategies. So if you're in a division that focuses on one of these, you can immediately see how the TEL criteria crosswalk over to it. So that's on the TEL website.
Really good.
They also have up there something you can give to your department chair or your administrators to do a classroom observation. If they're not a language person, you can say, here's a tool you can use that's specific to languages. You can help me by looking for these specific items, and you can help the administrator by talking into advance
That's what she just
as
said.
to what you might see.
Yes, because our administrators
Yeah.
are very nice, but they don't really know what's going on.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
here's some language for them.
And that
And
is
so
on the website?
This is on the TEL website.
Okay, good.
Mhm. And there's also not just a full observation, but also some walkthrough documents that are specific to a particular criteria.
Oh,
And that's
that's
a
good.
work in progress. They're not all up there yet, so you
Okay.
have to keep checking back. There'll
Because
be
they
more.
do 2 walkthroughs and 1 full.
Yeah.
Right there's one that's specific to foreign language instruction and learning environments.
Oh,
So if
that's
they're
great.
evaluating all the other teachers on there, they have some language on here they can look for specific to foreign language teachers. Or you can do it yourselves for a peer
Yeah.
assessment, for a group walkthrough, just for your own personal self-development. It does not have to be done by an administrator. Okay. I've given you a lot of information. I've talked a lot, I know, and I'm sorry. And we're going to get to the question points coming up. Before I let you question me, I want you to think about this question and self-assess. Is this a goal still? Do you need more help? Do you recognize this? And what evidence can you show that you have met these 3 objectives for today's workshop? The first objective was that you would be able to describe the correlations between the Virginia standards and the TEL project. The second one is that you can discuss how the Virginia standards relate to the foreign language pedagogy. And the third one is that you can tell how the Virginia framework that we're developing supports your professional development as a foreign language professional. So were we successful in establishing these 3 goal areas of meeting these objectives for today? Did you get the information, enough information to help you meet these goals? What do you think?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah? Let's do a thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs sideways. Yeah, I think I met them. No, didn't quite get it. I'm sorry, didn't quite get it off the side, and I'm still totally lost. Okay? Yeah, I've met these 3. So, totally lost. Okay? On the host site, maybe you can check in, let us know. How do your folks feel off site? Are we good, bad, or indifferent? All right, what do we got here? Good, 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 good. Good. All right, I got one. All right, did pretty good. I could do with some help. Okay. We've got some thank yous. We've got some yeses. I got some yeses here on site. Well, if you still need some help, luckily, you may not have gotten all of the resources you need. You may not remember everything, but what is the most important thing to remember?
To find the information.
Oh, you are so good. Where to find the information if you need it. So, if you need information, the website links are all listed on here, which you can't see, but maybe when you're at your personal computer you'll be able to. And they're also listed on your handout, and we'll put that up in the email. Okay? So, telproject.org. The Virginia Framework is on the FLAVA website. And the survey is at this link, which you can't read, but we will get out to you. Okay. It's time for me to stop talking, and we're going to start going over the questions that you have, either for me or for the group at large that you want to have brought out. Let me read the link for you. Just if you have a pen handy and you want the link, it's www.surveymonkey.com/S/75Y 5LHT. Okay, and Zach's going to put that in the chat just in case you didn't get it all, and you'll be able to write it down from there. So it is www.surveymonkey.com/s/5Y5LHT.
Are there two
Are the
S's
two
or
S's
one
one
S?
S?
75Y5LHT.
What's
Forward
about
slash
the
S, forward slash, just once.
Oh,
Just one.
wait.
Just one S.
One more.
Okay, questions? Thank you. Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you for logging in from Longwood. Okay, yes.
Okay, I have a question, and it goes back to something that was mentioned here about professional development. And if it's going too far off topic, I can take back my question. Okay, I just currently submitted everything for recertification. And my problem was that I attend every single professional development, especially in my content area, that is available to me, and I have spent lots of money doing that. I do not have my master's in my target language, so I'm required to have 3 hours. And I will tell you that courses that I have found are things that I already teach, like AP French, and the book that I was supposed to use to take this course, Advanced Grammar, I've already done it. I already teach it. I already know it. So my thing is there any way that it will ever change in the future? Because I get more by going to UVA conferences that are focused specifically on Victor Hugo or Québécois or La littérature française. I would like to know if that's ever going to happen, because I have had, you only need 180, and I had like 280,
Right.
and which was ridiculous. But I had to scramble around to take writing strategies 8 through 12 because there was nothing in my content area that was, I mean, I didn't mind paying for it, but it was very expensive and it was a joke.
Same thing.
Okay,
Nancy said that.
so we hear some other people agreeing on that. Got a two-pronged approach to
Oh my
this.
gosh.
One is teacher licensure requirements come up periodically for review,
Thank you.
and when they do, you need to be submitting comments to them. That's not my area, but you need to send it in as to what you need so that when it's being under review, they'll know what's happening. So that's the teacher end. The other end, I think we'd like to hear from the universities, is what can we do to better offer content where you can meet both the credit and
Get some
the specific needs that you have, and how can we get that word out to universities to try to do that? And I know that Dick, if he's willing to come and share with us, if you don't mind, is going to offer an online course, if he could possibly can, that might address part of that. Do you want to talk a little bit about any future plans? The question is, how can the universities better help teachers renew their licenses by providing content that meets not only the points they need, the 3 credits, but also real-world content for what's going to help them, and not just things they've already taken as part of their pre-certification
That
requirements.
you cannot take anyways because you've already taken it before. And what I was basically saying is I've attended many specific workshops in professional development that I'll get points for, but will not count toward the not having the master's in that specific content or what you're certified in, that certified area. And I have found that I had to scramble, and I took a couple elementary courses over the past 5 years, and I just recently took an online writing strategy in lieu of taking the only French course that I could take, because I already teach that class, even though it has a different name, and I used the textbook that they wanted me to buy because I already teach that and use that textbook in my high school class. But I had to fulfill that requirement for the DOE, even though I already had more than enough credits. And I noticed on here there were quite a few other teachers after I said that had the same problem. We are going out, we're searching things to better us, but we can't find things that are credit. I found continuing education courses, especially through community colleges online, but they did not give you university credit for those. You only got like professional development points
And
for it.
we need more content-specific things. That's really hard to find.
And I know we're a small field, or
Here's
small
our
group of
question:
people.
how can we get that information out to the university professors who decide, or administrators who decide what courses and content to offer?
I know it's a business, and there's not many of us.
Yeah, that's a big question to answer at this particular point. Just trying to think. How do we disseminate that information? I think through the Department of Education, I think that's where we would
No,
start first of all.
You can't do it through travel on there anymore. Oh, somebody said the travel.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. But like, see, I've done all that. Like the summer I took kids to that didn't even count at all toward my
They took
Virginia
that away now.
recertification.
They took the travel thing
Which
away.
is fine, but I did
No,
that
I
for
think what
myself.
she's saying is there's courses available if you can travel, but if you're not able to because you have kids, you can't get there
Well, yeah, that's the
to
problem.
take
And
those
you,
courses.
and you can't take 3 weeks off in the summertime and do intensive
Yeah.
tech programs either anymore. When I was younger, I could.
So you know what, that may not be something we have an answer to, but
Yeah,
I just
think
wanted to
so.
bring
That's
that
a
out
good point.
because we mentioned professional development and
And
I
it's
take
frustrating.
everything that is offered to me, and I love going to UVA when they have those professions, and they're specific
they
in my
have
target
a-
language with natives, non-natives, and I feel like I'm back in a university graduate course.
Yeah, UVA has those free workshops.
But it's
We did a
not
whole
college
thing on
credit.
French for Quebecois
Mhm.
and L'Afrique du Nord.
Right.
We had a whole thing all day long, and it was free for teachers. And you get recertification credit, but you don't get university credit. And the thing is that it's kind of problematic because I don't have to worry about that because I do have my master's, but Lynn is like 1 credit short of having her master's,
It's
and every
true.
5 years this is a dilemma.
Yeah.
Because if you have your master's, you don't have to take a class.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think there's 2 considerations at this particular point, especially here at Washington and Lee. One of them is since we were hosting the language academies, one of the things that we had thought about doing, and Lisa is aware of this, is having some type of an immersion type situation in the summer months when the academies are going on here. But that's still in the
Okay.
thinking phases, and there might be something that comes out
Oh,
of that.
that'd be good.
There's another possibility too, but I can't say anything for sure at this particular point. We're under consideration, or we are considering presently the possibility of putting online our Education 365 course, which deals with methods for foreign languages.
Sure.
Okay?
Right,
Yeah,
but
but
I don't know if
that
that would qualify.
Yeah, just to let you know, a couple of
Yeah.
things that are in the works here at WNL. Nothing can be promised at this point, but I think that there's a possibility of some.
When I was scrambling to try to find, I was told, oh, well, you are foreign language, and I was like, I've already had a class on this French African literature, and I'm teaching this author, Marianne Mabah, what have you, and I've already done that, I already have this. And so I was told, well, just take anything in vocabulary or ESL or writing strategies, and I'm like, so it's basically take anything to fulfill that requirement, not
If
to
it's a
better
waste of
me
time.
or my students. Anyways, I've taken that up, but thank you for bringing that up.
Well, I see, a lot of folks are heading on out, and I know it's past our time, and I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to sign off
Thank
if
you
need
so
to.
much.
Yeah.
But thank you all for coming. Thank you for spending
Thank
this
you.
time with us afterwards. And those of you who are still stuck with us on there and stayed till the end, thank you so much. I really appreciate that you've joined in. If you have any questions about foreign language initiatives in Virginia, I'll be happy to try to answer them. If I don't know the answer, I'll try to point you to the people who can help you out. But thank you again for coming, and happy teaching and learning.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Okay. If I could just say a couple of words before we go bye-bye this evening, because I noticed that it's dark outside already. We do have another workshop, which is scheduled for the 20th of February. It's going to be broadcasting here again in Washington and Lee. And it's going to be Sheila Cockey who's going to be speaking to us, and she's from the National Capital Language Resource Center. And I have her topic, and the topic is sort of what we've been talking about this evening. Why assessing your students begins with assessing yourself. And notice that if you go to the particular page where we have the registration for you, there are correlations there with TEL already. So we know that this particular workshop will work closely with A1 and A2. So we're thrilled of what Lisa has done for us this evening by the fact that we have launched what I consider to be a very, very meaningful and hopefully productive workshop series during this term and even continuing into the fall. And I appreciate her presence very much. I think she already knows that 6,000 times already today. For having come in and sharing all the knowledge that she has with regard to TEL. And all of you, drive home safely, keep in contact, and make sure that you get your friends and your colleagues to attend the next workshops. Okay? Good night.
Merci
Bye-bye.